Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Briar Harvey. This is the Neurodiversity Media Network, and we are here today with the fabulous. Oh my goodness, I got it right today. It's a first. The fabulous Karina Blackheart. All right, y'all. So, if you have not watched us before, we are talking about the wheel of the year, and the wheel is beginning to turn towards. Take it away.
Spring Equinox. Spring Equinox, also known as Ostara, for those of you who prefer to use the old Germanic goddess's name. Spring Equinox is the quarter day, right? We have equal hours of night and day. And after the spring equinox, we have more sunlight every day than darkness. So we've been inching up to that equinox point on the wheel of the year. We're recording this on February 29th so that we can get it to you in time. So I want to tell you that it was about 3 days ago that where I live, I woke up, went outside with my dog and said, oh, it changed, right? So the subtle something in the light, in the air, in the quality of air, in the temperature, certainly, but that has to do with climate change mostly, that we had come out of the downturn of the energy from Bridget, from Imbolc, and are starting to now see the momentum that brings us to the next Sabbath, which is the spring equinox. So these very subtle changes, right, are really what I'm hoping that our audience will be paying attention to. I don't know. My dog is doing something. It's real life is happening here.
Real life is always happening on this network.
Yeah, real life is happening. There's the chipmunks and squirrels are outside the window, and they are just like literally taunting my dog. They're like, ha, 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 you can't get us. So when I talk about the wheel year, I'm asking us if we can develop a more personalized, hyper local, right, and culturally relevant approach to marking these seasonal shifts, these 8 seasonal shifts. Certainly you may have, I know that I do, micro seasons. Mud season is one here. Maple sugaring season is one here. So we have like these little micro seasons within these 8. But as we pay attention to this wheel year, a lot of us are honoring our ancestral traditions or some European or Celtic tradition that may have nothing to do with the ancestors, with our blood ancestry. It's just sort of the neo-pagan worldview, right? Is that we use the names and the symbols that come primarily from the Celts, some from the Norse. What am I going to do about this dog? Many of us in the United States, when we think about the wheel year, we think about it in sort of neo-pagan terms. that came out of Wiccan traditions, which were developed in England, right? So the names of the wheel year have to do with Celtic gods, goddesses, language, and what was happening on the land there. And if those are your ancestral traditions, that's great. But I would encourage you to understand, to research what your ancestral traditions were. What were the people that you are related to in the places that your people came from? What were their traditions? What were they practicing? What were they doing? What were they eating? But also developing this more personalized, local, on the land that we occupy, and culturally relevant to the time that we are living in approach to marking the wheel year's seasonal shifts. This helps us to celebrate in really meaningful ways, especially during these intersecting global crises. Um, we want to honor the ancestors, but we are also responsible for being the bridge between them and our descendants, right? So thinking about not just in one direction, but what's happening now and what do we want to pass on, what traditions, what's important to us, to our descendants, whether you have biological descendants or not, you have cultural descendants. So there's something here about taking personal, environmental, and cultural inventories, right? What happens to me personally at particular times of the year, right? And we happen to have this wheel year set up for us, right? With the quarter and cross quarter days, where we can ask ourselves things like, what time of year do I get sick? What time of year do I feel abundant? What time of year do I get depressed? What time of year do I feel scarcity in my life? When do I begin projects? When do I end relationships? And to sort of look over the course of your life when you answer these questions, because a map for you and your personal wheel year is going to arise out of responding to these questions. So in the workbooks, that I have a little package. So there's a workbook that has all of these questions for this particular season. And then there's a guided meditation for this particular season. And if you collect all 8, you have, or you can buy them as a package of 8 and they'll just come to you every Sabbath. But what you'll have is a developing map of what's happening on the land, what happens in my life, what's happening in the culture. And you can begin to plan accordingly. So sometimes if you always get sick in March, you might not be planning for March because you forgot about last March and the March before and the March before that. But if you have this map, you can say, "Oh, I need to take care of myself better," right? I need to maybe wear my mask when I'm out, or do a cleanse for from eating all of that heavy winter food, or if you know that you feel scarcity in February, how can you prepare for that in the months before so that you have a little extra cushion? So this mapping of our personal wheel year is not just a that's the wrong language. It is a spiritual approach because our spirituality is embedded in our day-to-day lives, right? I'm trying to move our idea of these seasonal Sabbath days out of a sort of holiday celebration and into really paying attention to ourselves, the land we live on, and the culture we're in. These questions are sort of these inquiries are doorways. Every inquiry is a doorway, is a portal. It's a way in to knowing ourselves better. And these are doorways into knowing the land that we live on better, and knowing the culture so that we can anticipate changes better. So it behooves us to sort of move out of the, pretty pagan celebration thing, which is beautiful. And we need that. We certainly need that, especially in this time of intersecting crises. But to take it a little deeper, to help us in our day-to-day lives, and as we try to maneuver these intersecting crises that we're living through.
Before we hit record, Karina and I were having a pretty bleak discussion
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because that's a lot of what the world is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, y'all, I have seen these workbooks. They are meaty, they are juicy, and they will definitely help you figure out. There's a lot about our faith that can be fluffy.
Mm-hmm.
What we want you to
Mm-hmm.
do here is dive deep, not into the shadows, although that's part of it.
That will come later in the year.
But what we want you to do is an actual investigation of who you are, where your life is, and how to find peace and joy in as meaningfully a way as you can in this shit show we call a world right now. Now, paid subscribers to the NMN get the workbook and the meditation for free. The
Mm-hmm.
rest of you will have links to go and purchase. I encourage you to do so. I encourage you to buy them all like Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
Collect them all now. Set yourself up for success.
Mm-hmm.
I think because that's it, right? It's all terrible. It's all going to hell. And I have to live here, so I can't be stuck there.
Right. And what we have to find the ground where we are, right? We have to stand firmly right where we are, because we're in this cultural, political, climate, economic. I mean, there's just, when you look out there, okay, and it impacts us, right? But when we look out there, it's just like, oh my God, right? Like, oh my goddess, oh my, and we feel so powerless. I'm not advocating that we all, go into our little shells, right? And not take any action in the world. I'm saying that know thyself, know where you stand, know what you stand for, has perhaps never been, it's never been more important in my lifetime, right? As
Mhm.
long as I'm looking out there at what the media, right? Social media, the mainstream media is pushing, is feeding me, right? In the feed of news, in the feed of Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Insta, whatever you're watching, whatever you're consuming from that feed, right? Um, I know we want to be there because it feels like a distraction from all of this. And it can be if you've really curated your feed very, very well. But you can't keep the propaganda from entering your eyes and ears. One of the things that I teach my students is everything that comes in becomes part of us. Everything, not just food and water, but what comes in the ear. My voice coming into your ear right now, the message that I'm giving you is being absorbed by your nervous system and your cells. So be careful what you're consuming. But bringing it back to this work is this is to help us stay grounded in where we are, the land that we live on that feeds us, that gives us water, that gives us shelter, where our family is, that gives us love, and how do we give back, and to stay grounded and rooted in our self, our values, because the propaganda is really slick and continuous right now, right? I mean, 6 years ago, whenever that was, 5 years ago, was it 8 years ago? I don't know, 2016. Yeah, 8 years ago. We were at least sharing with each other how to recognize propaganda.
Hmm.
That messaging isn't even available
No.
anymore, right? I
And
saw
there's
one.
more of it than ever, right?
There's more than ever, right? And there are more crises than ever to be propagandized about, right? So again, I'm not advocating that we go in and stay in, isolate in a shell, but I'm saying that the questions in these workbooks, in this paying attention to where we are and what is happening where we are, especially because we are in climate change. There's no snow on the ground where I live. I should be shoveling out 3 feet of snow today, right?
And Texas is on fire,
And
y'all.
Texas is on fire. We had 70-mile-an-hour winds last night. That happens, but it happens at the end of March. We're about 4 to 7 weeks early with this seasonal shift. So luckily, maybe it's because of the work you and me are doing, Briar. Maybe because we're recording these 4 weeks early, we've moved the whole wheel. What do you think? We are that powerful?
No.
Um, it did occur to me this morning. I'm like, Um, so all of these inquiries in the workbooks are to help you know yourself better and to help connect you to land and your traditions, right? Whether those are ancestral traditions or like, oh yeah, we always do that together as a family in the spring, right? Around where I live, everybody, well, if there was snow on the ground, everyone right now would be going to the sugar shacks where they make maple syrup and having maple snow. So they literally take the hot maple syrup and a scoop of snow from out the back door and pour the hot maple syrup on it. And it creates like this beautiful, chewy, taffy thing. And the rest of it is like a snow cone, maple snow cone. That's a tradition here, right? That's, everybody's going to the sugar houses. They're still going, but they're going for pancakes, right? But what are some of those things that happen where you live that you partake in that you sort of maybe set aside as different from this season, this Sabbath season of spring equinox? This is to help us stay centered and grounded, right?
And to make new traditions when the old ones die.
and to make new traditions when they don't make sense anymore,
Right.
right? Like at Breed, we talked about no sheep where I live. That's a thing that I don't do. I don't call it that because I don't call it in bulk because that's not relevant to my life. It doesn't matter if it was relevant to an eighth of my ancestors. It's not relevant now. What's relevant now? What will help us now? What will feed us now? Right? This, talking about creating new rituals. I mean, they don't have to look like a pagan ritual either, right? I'm looking for, because it's spring, because we're moving into spring and I have all my seeds are lined up and all my stuff for my garden is like lined up along the kitchen wall waiting, right? Part of me wants to project way out, right? And then in August, September, all of that food is going to be ready at once, right? It's going to have to be picked. It's going to have to be washed. It's going to have to be preserved. It's going to have to be shared. It's going to have to be given away. And I thought, our world has gotten so wacky that those of us who are doing that kind of, it's not homesteading what I do. It's not. It's a little kitchen farm, right? It's a little kitchen garden. But we're all trying to do some of that and learning how to do that alone in our kitchens by ourselves, because nuclear family, which is a disaster. I'm going to invite everybody I know who has in the little town I live in and from in the valley to come, and we'll set up tables outside and we'll set up burners so that we can have all the pots going and all the cutting boards, and let's have a weekend where everybody's stuff gets done. Everybody's canning is done. Everybody's things that are going in the freezer are ready to go. And we build community that way. And we give thanks for food that way. And we change the culture that way. That's really different than standing in a circle in our pretty dresses. I'm sorry, I'm really snarky about this, but I've been around long enough to be snarky. I'm not even sorry. Standing in a circle in our pretty dresses, doing sympathetic magic or symbolic magic about these days, rather than going in our kitchen,
And
you
doing the
know,
work.
and doing the work, right? Or going in the garden and doing the work, right? I am much more inclined to go to a canning and preserving party or a chicken butchering party or a learn how to cook on your hearth or on an open fire party, right? Than I am to go and sing a song in a circle. It's just how I've evolved. That's the deep magic. That's the deep connection to the land has produced all of this food now. Do we throw it away? We can't eat it all at once.
So let's get back to spring.
Yeah. So this time of year, right, this balance point, there's a lot around balance, right? And there's a lot of folks that I've worked with over the years who, when I say, how can I help you, right? Use your magic to make your life better. They want balance. I just want to have balance. And so Spring Equinox, our ceremonies, our rituals, our practices can have something to do with balance. But being the rebel that I am, the one who pokes holes in everything, it's just who I am, right? The balance is like 1 minute. It lasts for a minute. And if you want to catch that minute, you can, I don't know, somewhere I wrote what time it is. 11:06 p.m. on March 19th is the moment of this equinox. So that is the moment, if you're awake, you can take an egg, you can
It's my
balance it.
favorite
Yeah.
tradition.
Yes, it's great. It's great fun. And the kids love it. We all love it. But after that moment, what happens?
The
The
egg
egg falls
falls over.
over. Right. And so after that moment of that balance, we're headlong into the next thing, right? Balance is dynamic, right? Balance can be static and stagnant, or balance, most balance is a dynamic process, right? So if you're walking a tightrope, you're not standing still on that tightrope. If you do, you're going to fall down. Your every little muscle in your body is adjusting to stay on that tightrope. So, yes, that moment of balance, hooray! It's really miraculous, right? It happens twice a year. My magic has always been like, now we get to fall headlong, laughing, rolling down the hill, ecstatically into the momentum of springtime, the renewal of springtime, the emergent energy of springtime, right? All of that activity that's been happening under the ground starts to burst forth, right? The seed cracks open. The little shoot goes down to start making roots. Another shoot comes up to start seeking the light, right? And that there's such power there, right? A seed, by the way, is not a tomato, and an embryo is not a child. Just needed to slide that in because that's in the arena. um, so what have we been seeding, right? At winter solstice, we talked about dream time and writing down and journaling and allowing ourselves the spaciousness of that dark, quiet, cozy time of year to dream forth, right? What do I want? What am I seeding? What do I want to grow? How do I want to be? What changes am I ready to make? And if we're operating our own businesses, which a lot of your audience is, how do I want to grow my business this year? Right? How do I want to grow my skill set? What am I needing? So we spend that time dreaming of it, and then we start to get a little momentum at In Bulk Breed, and we add fire to that, we add our passion to that. But now comes this emergent growth, right? We're starting to see some, even if it's just the tiniest little shoot, right? We're starting to see momentum. We're starting to see how our efforts, even if they were just dreams, right? Seed dreams are starting to burst forth and emerge from that dark territory that we've been in during the winter.
So, how do we best cultivate seed time?
Well, I mean, I literally every year say I'm not going to plant seeds because I don't really have the light in my house or the spoons, right? To keep up with it. And I always plant too early, and then they shrivel in their little tiny little things. Um, and I wind up having to go buy somebody else's that, is good at growing seeds. but I have all of the seeds.
Big same, by the way. So I feel you.
Yeah. So, but I have all the packages of seeds again. And I even, and that means that I had to also get all of the trays that the seed goes in and all of the vermiculite that goes in the trays, which if I didn't quit every year, I wouldn't have to keep buying that stuff. So, on that level, on the garden level, right? This is the time, right? You're getting your seeds, you're getting your plants, you're figuring out where things are going to go. We built 2 raised beds this past weekend. Where I have some old windows that have to be brought down out of the shed to put on them for cold frames because I don't know what the weather's doing, right? So there's that. There's like all of this, like preparing the earth. In other places that are warmer climates than here, it's already time. People are putting stuff in the ground, right? It's already well past any danger of frost, or there's never a danger of frost there. So that's on the sort of the garden, right? Which is land that we tend, that we have relationship to from seed until we're eating the fruits of our labor, literally. This is time to be pruning, right? I was out in my 13 blueberry bushes that are probably 40 years old. And last year I marked all of the branches that I knew didn't produce, right? These old, long branches that, take so much energy from the plant, right? And yes, they had new growth, and already it's too soon. But, cutting out there in the little bit of snow that we had and cutting all of those branches down. So this time of year is, we think about it as like planting and seeding, but it's also clearing. It's also
Mhm.
purifying, cleansing, what stunts growth,
Mhm.
right? So on a personal, so that's the land, the garden. On a personal level, this is a time of year where I really am focused on spiritual cleansing, right? This is a taboo topic, right? People are like, oh, you're saying that we're dirty. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying we collect detritus from just like I said, when my voice goes in your ear, it's in you now, right? Whether you reject it or not with your mind, right? It's in you, right? So spiritual cleansing is a all year long thing, but particularly this time of year, sort of sloughing off the detritus and the sluggishness and the tiredness of winter, right? This is the time. So we can do that with spiritual cleansing, simple things. Take a bath, throw a handful of salt in there. It doesn't have to be a big um event. And in fact, the larger we make it, right, in our minds, the less likely we are to do it. So
I want to
literally,
talk about that.
yeah, I keep my things that I use for spiritual cleansing sit on my bathtub along with my shampoo and my soap so that it is that easy. And I trust these things that I put in my tub to do what I've been taught that they do. And now I've had 30 years of practice with them, and they do what they're supposed to do. So throw, a couple cups of Epsom salts in your bath. If you want to get fancier, mix it up with some baking soda and some sea salt, but be ready to go to bed after you do that because it it's a cleanse, right? Like if you're carrying a 50-pound backpack and you're used to it and that feels fine, and then you take it off and suddenly you're like, oh my God, I'm sore all over, I'm exhausted, I need to lay down. When we start doing spiritual cleansing, energetically, it can feel like that, right? Like I didn't know that I was carrying 50 pounds of just psychic detritus just from watching the news, from having an argument with your mother-in-law, from being worried about the bills, from fighting for healthcare for your child, right? Or your partner. All of those things energetically weigh on us. And so spiritual cleansing is so important. It's not spiritual cleansing like I'm dirty or I'm broken, or there are practices for, geez, I've got this way of being that I really want to change because it's not helping me, right? But just the junk that we pick up from just living in the world, like take a cleansing bath, right? And I know that people are inclined these days to want to cleanse with smoke because we've appropriated this whole smudging thing, right? And you can cleanse with smoke. The way that people who are not indigenous, who we didn't steal that practice from, have done it around the world is you put what you're burning in a pot on the floor, and you put a sheet over you get naked, you put a sheet over your head or your robe or whatever, and you stand, it's called a fumigation, and you fumigate yourself. Personally, I prefer the bathtub. It's just easier
Listen,
than trying
my
not to
people
light
use
myself up.
olive oil. So,
Yes,
like,
yes, yep. Where are your people from? What did they do? And what makes sense to you now, right? We can be attached to these traditions, or this is the thing I learned and I don't know what else to do. Or this is the thing everybody in my community does, so this is what I'll do too. But like, make it whatever it is you choose to do, like, make it easy so that you do it. Spiritual cleansing bath doesn't have to be 65 candles in the bathtub. It doesn't have to be an Instagram layout, right? It has to be the stuff is in the tub. I'm putting my body in there and I'm just saying, whatever is on me that doesn't belong, please get off. And then let it go down the drain. That's so easy, right? So this time of year, big spiritual cleansing to get rid of the last 6 months of being in the dark and increasing darkness and then slowly increasing light. And that will that will lighten us up. It will lighten our load. It'll prepare us for the season that we're in. Foods that we eat, you know, again, this is just because I'm tuned in this way, I notice what's on my plate. And for about the past week, I want every green thing that I can find, right? Like cook the whole 2-pound bag of kale because I know I'm going to eat that in the next day and a half, right? Make all the spinach, eat all the broccoli, give me the Brussels sprouts, give all of the green things, the asparagus, right? And already salad is arriving on my plate, right? I still want soup, but I want soup with a salad, or I want salad with the warm things on top of it, right? Or I want my fried eggs in the morning on top of a raw spinach, right? Paying attention. What is my body craving? That's a clue, like the season is changing. My body knows before my mind knows because it's telling me what I want to eat. Oh, I want green tea now. When are the nettles going to be coming up? Because nettle tea in the springtime, that's a internal cleanser, right? Um, helps with your kidneys, helps with your liver. I'm not an herbalist. I'm not going to take any chances, but it's a thing that I do, right? What kind of greens? The kales, collards, spinach, all the leafy green things. The body is wanting those to cleanse and clear, lighten the diet after eating the way that we are supposed to in the winter.
I find movement comes back for me too at this
Yes.
time of year in a big way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So instead of like letting Frenchie out the door, my dog, like, go chase the squirrels, do whatever you're going to do. I'll come find you in 20 minutes. It really has been like, come on, let's go. Mom's coming you're taking mom for a walk. Right. And yeah, wanting to be outside with those pruners and wanting to be outside, like pacing out where is this garden going to be? Wanting to roam through, in the sunlight to get that sun on our skin, because we can take the vitamin D, but it's not the same thing really as absorbing sunlight into the skin that produces natural vitamin D for us. Yeah. So yes, all the outside things.
Okay. What else? Because so much of this work is, certainly as you and I were taught it, very ritualized, very intricate, very all of the things, right?
Yeah.
How are we simplifying in this season?
Well, magic is really simple. It's simple and it's complex, right? So I think that if you're on a magical path, right, which is maybe a little different than a pagan path, right? Um, where like this is the wheel year and this is what I'm celebrating. I'm not going to try to define pagan. I would be out of my mind to try to do that. Although we probably get a lot of views for the controversy. Paganism, the craft is not so much what we do, but who we are,
Hmm.
right? So if you want to find your magic, you're not going to find it in a book. You're not going to find it on a master class. You may find some things that you agree with or that you want to try. Like, hopefully you'll be like, I'm going to try that spiritual cleansing thing that Karina was talking about, right? Um, but if magic is less about what we do and more about who we are, then it becomes simple. It becomes simple. I think I'm also speaking from my experience. I had many, many years of like formal training. I had the initiations and the certifications and the vision quests and the right. And so at some point, it really does just become who you are, right? But I think that if you're inclined or interested or attracted to magic, to the craft, to paganism, that one of the components is us. There's a lot of stuff out there being sold to us all the time, right? All the tchotchkes and the doodahs and the wands and the knives and the chalice and the cards and the more cards and the more cards and the more books and the more. There's lots of stuff out there being sold to us. My experience, what I've noted over time is that as our little corner of the world has become more and more and more commodified, that we as practitioners mistake reading the book or having the thing, for doing the thing and being the thing. Right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
And being and doing does not require having.
My body is my altar. I don't mean that like, you know, like the Instagram girls, right? Um, yes to that. Yes to that when you're in your 20s, right? And when you're younger than me. I'm like, what, I don't even have time to think about it. But but my body is literally my magical tool. I am made of earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. If I can't cast with my finger, I shouldn't even have an afame or a wand, right? I want to be able to do my magic wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. I want to be able to be doing spell work while I'm sitting in a crowded restaurant. And that's being really well trained, right? But that's also not having to have a bunch of stuff. But if you're sitting at a restaurant, you have a plate, a pentacle, you have a knife, you have salt on the table, you have a glass with water in it, right?
If
Maybe
it's
you have
even a reasonably fancy restaurant, you
a
probably have a
candle on the table.
candle in the glass.
Do you see? What we need is around us all the time. So I know it's weird coming from me, who has somewhat commodified my craft in order to live in the world, right? But this constant like obtaining of objects and more and more and more books that really regurgitate the same thing over and over and over again, when the magic is in you. If you're pagan, the magic is in the land.
Dear Lord, she
Go
just saved
talk,
you hundreds of dollars.
go talk to the land. Go watch the wheel turn. Be led by the moon. That's my next series, by the way. I shouldn't have said it on here because now I can't get the website or whatever. Anyways, sorry, went into business protective mode there for a second. But we need ourselves. And so these little workbooks, right, help you to find your magic. Like, oh, yeah, I remember when we used to do that when I was a kid. We would go to the thing every year, right? Or we would always be doing that at that time of the year. We would always be eating this kind of food at that time of year. You already have magic. It doesn't matter what the Celts were doing 900 years ago. What are you doing now? And what do you want to give our biological and cultural descendants? What do we want them to remember us for? We who lived through the great turning, this great uproar, the great changing climate. What besides that's what we left them? What else do we want to leave them? What traditions will we pass on about what's really important to us during this time?
I want
The
to
descendants are as important as the ancestors.
and I want to talk about that.
Mm.
When we paganism more than many other faiths is built for the infinite game, right? To encourage us to think about our descendants just as much as our ancestors. But I think that that requires very deliberate practice. How do we do that?
Well, what my Lakota friend says is every decision is based upon how will this affect the next 7 generations, right? There's no law against us asking ourselves that question. How will this affect the future? How will this impact the children's 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 children? I have practices that I do with the descendants that are as profound, real, life-changing as what a lot of people are doing that are focused really heavily right now on healing their ancestral lineage. My understanding is that if you're doing that work, that you're healing yourself, right? So that's good. When we're healing ourselves, we are also healing, right? If we're healing our own trauma, we are not passing it on generationally, right? Or it may be too late. I probably did pass on my trauma to my children,
I
right?
know I
But
did.
we're all doing the best we can, and we're all doing better than what we had, right? So there's has to be deep compassion and forgiveness as well. I know that my kids are way healthier than I was at their age, and that if they choose to have children, and even if they don't, their impact on the world, on their communities, in their relationships will be healthier than mine has been, right? And that they have the tools as well to keep doing their personal work and are invested in doing their personal work. My generation, we made it up, right? Gen X were like, what are we doing? What huh? Right? My parents were the silent generation. I had a passel of older siblings that were boomers and then me. And there was no like, these are the tools to be a healthy person. We just
No,
like
we were sent outside and told not to come home until it was dark.
until we got to be teenagers and then they wanted us home and we were like, we're
That
not
ship has
staying
already
home.
sailed, friends.
Right. So what is our practice for our descendants? I think is to keep it in our mind that we're not just like our ancestors are impacting us, we are impacting the future. And if we think about time, there are ways to think about time where all time is happening now. And so what we're doing now is immediately impacting our descendants now in the life that they're living now that we can't access because we have bought into a construct of time. So when future, past, and present are mingled and continually impacting one another, it requires that we take responsibility for ourselves and our actions and our healing and our magic and where we put our money and where we put our energy and what we give attention to, right? So bringing it all back again to we are the vessel, right? I don't mean an empty vessel, right? We are a microcosm of all that is, was, and is yet to be. And so that requires a level of responsibility, I think personal responsibility, right? And responsibility toward, not for, but toward our loved ones, our families, our extended families, our chosen communities, and the ones that we will never meet. And this is new for white European people. to be thinking about the descendants beyond the ones that we get to hold in our arms.
Hmm.
But it is not new on the planet. It is not new in human consciousness. It's new to us because we are focused on getting ahead, right, in capitalism, under capitalism, which we are coming to learn that some of us have known for a while, but we're coming to learn that the promises of capitalism are not for everyone. And it doesn't matter how many hours a day we work. That dream may or may not happen for us, but more likely not, right? So for me, what that means is, for me, and I know that you and I would disagree about this on some level, but for me, that means what's enough for me, right? What is enough, right? And that doesn't mean scrimping, right? That doesn't mean being scared. It means what is enough for me to be well nourished, well rested. My neurodivergent brain can have some peace, right? Um, I can leave a little something, which is this house, right? That's it. That's what my kids get. And they're going to be like, "Oh my God, she left us a house. She left us that house with all of the things it needs." But it's what I can do, right? Um, so for me, it's a matter of what's enough. And that number is always surprising to me when I add it up, because we are living in a culture where all the things get more expensive every year. But it's not about bajillions, right? Or billions or even millions. It's about what can I do to take care of myself and my beloveds for as long as I'm here.
And this is a both and, y'all,
Hmm.
because that is an absolutely acceptable vision.
Hmm.
I want millions, possibly billions, because I'm fairly confident I can do better than some of these assholes we've got right now.
Absolutely. And you're younger than me, right?
Hmm.
I'm 59. I'm like, I mean, how many more years of this do I have in me?
Right.
How many more years do I want to be trying to sell $21 workbooks? You know, how many I want to have to be comfortable enough so that I can write the books, right? I want to be comfortable enough so that if I don't feel like doing anything that day but going for a walk on the beach, that I can choose to do that,
You missed my
right?
whole rant in the workroom earlier today about sand, but that's exactly it. You get to paint the vision. You get to
Yes.
decide, but you have to decide.
Yes, we have to decide because our decision sets the spell in action, right? If we're just like, I don't know, I just want to be comfortable. Well, what does that mean? What does be comfortable mean? What does it mean in dollars? Figure that out, because then you have the beginning of a real spell for prosperity, right? Not some gesture that you make and hope that prosperity comes. That works. I mean, you'll get a little bump of something. Sometimes it'll be a little like, ooh, now I have to go back and fix some things.
Right.
Because, you know, there's a particular deity that I sometimes work with only if I'm like really in a pinch, right? And it always, the money always comes, but man, there's just a mess to have to clean up behind the rushing this money to me, right? From this particular deity. I won't besmirch his name here. Um, because I might need to ask him a favor again in the future. That's the only reason why I won't besmirch his name right now. But this is spell work. This is magic. That's creating the parameters, the boundary, the what is the goal of the magic, and that it be specific. So spring equinox.
I
and
told you we were
and
going
that
to do all of the
all the
things in
things,
this
all the
hour.
things. So at this time of year, as we have our dream, right? That nefarious, I just want to feel like that. Now is the time to be like, these are the parameters of the garden bed, right? These are the seeds that I am going to plant so that I can pick the tomato off the vine in August, in September, or pick the pumpkin for a jack-o'-lantern in October, right? And pick the very last ones so for pumpkin pie for November, right? We're setting this is both very emergent, very expansive, very momentous, big momentum, and container, right? If I just go outside and broadcast seed into my whatever that land is out there, I think that's what they did. They were just like, oh, that got muddy, let's throw some grass seed down there. But if I just do that, I don't know what I'll get or when, or if it will get run over by a lawnmower or a tractor. What do I want exactly in my garden? What don't I want? This is a time for really preparing that soil, right? And putting those seeds and taking those actions, right? Magic requires that we take real world action. It's our part of the bargain, right? Hello, everybody, land spirits, gods, goddesses, devas, devadasi, the little land spirits, the big spooky land spirits, right? We ask them for their help and they want to help us, but not if we're not going to do our part too, right? It's a partnership, and it's a partnership that does improve how things turn out, how the garden grows, right? And the garden here is a metaphor, of course, right? For your business, your relationships, your family dynamics, the healing that you need to do, right?
And also, you can make it real. Even if you don't plant it in the physical world, you can certainly plant your garden in the metaphysical one. And I
Yeah.
encourage you to do so.
Yes. Yep. Even if all you do in the physical world is get a basil seed and put it in some dirt on your windowsill, right? That's a sympathetic magic, right?
Mhm.
Um, but if you want to move your magic into an arena where your life really changes because of because you're good at magic. You're good at the dreaming, you're good at the creating, this is where Saturn and Pisces are, just walking along together for these few years when my Saturn return happens to be happening. It's perfect.
Oh,
So
delightful for you.
there's
I'm
this
sorry.
dreaming stuff, right? But also that container, that boundary, that edge. Like know what it is that you really want tangibly, physically, be able to see it, taste it, touch it, hear it, smell it, and feel what that feels like in your body to have it. Then you have a visualization that will work in your magic. I call that polysensory visualization, right? It's not just the what does it look like, right? A lot of us don't even have that skill, but we can be like, oh, I know what that will feel like, right? I know people who are like, "Ooh, I hear that." It's like this, vibration, right? Or a particular tone that they'll hear. So the more of that you can bring on board when you're planting your garden, the better, because that is creating the container. How do I want it to look? What do I want it to feel like? What do I want it to taste like? How do I want to feel at the end of the day when I have that? Right. But this is the time to cast the spell, to plant the garden, to do your magic, and to take responsibility.
Okay, y'all. I said we were going to go all over the place.
We
We
went
went
all over.
all over the place. This has been a journey. And I want to leave people with, first of all, some information on how to work with you in this capacity if
Mhm.
they need help planting the garden.
Sure. So if you want to just have a conversation with me, right? And it will go like this, right? If you ask me a question, like the layers, the petals on the lotus flower open and open and open and open, right? And then we run out of time. Okay? So if you want to have a coffee date with me, you can go to my website, oh, that's my old website, thecroneherself.com, and just book a coffee date for an hour. If you want to work with me for a longer period of time, I offer what I call big crone energy sessions, right? I'm the big crone. I'm the crone herself. You get to be in my energy, but we also get to find where that lives in you, right? That part of you that is like, I'm solid. I know who I am. I trust what comes out of my mouth most of the time, right? And my life is going along as expected, right? Doing shadow work, moving the things out of the way that are in your way, your patterns, your behaviors, your traumas that are in your way. We move those out. So that's big crone energy sessions. And that is going to look really different from person to person to person to person, depending upon you, because you're unique. So I don't work with a formula. I work with you. Also, thecroneherself.com under, I don't remember what part of the menu it's in front of, because my brain is not doing that right now.
It's
You can
okay.
find me
We'll
on
link it.
Substack. Please sign up for my mailing list. Um, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Threads, I'm on Facebook. I'm, everywhere that I can manage to be. Mhm.
Again, paid subscribers get access to the workbook and the meditation. We'll link the paid version in the comments so that you can go and purchase that. Karina,
Mhm.
thank you.
Briar, thank you. Such good questions, such good conversation.
Always, my friend.
Mm.
We'll see y'all again for the next turn of the wheel.
Beltane.
Beltane. All right, y'all. Have an amazing spring. I hope you plant amazing things. I hope you grow